any questions that you might have about, well, I know it's going to come as a shock to you, yoga. So to start, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about dealing with injuries. My hair being a mess, but not an actual injury because I just practiced. So I'd like to start the conversation by talking about injuries, and then if you have questions about recovering from injuries or specific injuries, I'm not a physiologist, but I do the best I can with what I've got. And also, if you have any other questions about anything, about any postures that you are having challenges with, if there are any concepts that you need elucidated, if there's something in one of my videos that hasn't made sense to you, I know that in my head everything always makes a lot of sense, but it's possible that doesn't always make sense to everybody. Also, I have a computer set up to the side so I can see comments better. So if I keep looking over there, it is only to check out chat because I am here to chat today. Okay, well, everybody knows that I am chatty, so words have never been at a loss for me. So today, I want to start out by talking about injuries and dealing with them, and also how I personally have worked to recover from them. Now, for those of you who have been following me for a while, you have seen me with quite a variety of braces. You've seen them on my wrist, on my hand, on my elbow, and of course, for well over a year on my knee. I tore my meniscus a while back, probably about 7 years ago now, 8 years ago maybe. But the biggest injury that I had was, it has to have been at least 15 years ago when I tore my shoulder. Okay, now this was very monumental. Keep in mind that back then I was in my mid-30s, so things healed a little bit differently than they do now. I'm not one to give in to the concept of age, but as you know, if you follow me closely as well, I am 52 right now. So injuries, they heal differently. I have to be honest. But that being said, I'm a very big proponent of not letting your injuries stop you or define you. Okay, a little bit of background. My first major injury was when I tore my shoulder, okay? And I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me that I definitely needed surgery, which was a bummer because I did not want surgery, and hello Blossom. And so what happened was I was like, okay, well, what if I rested a little bit? What if I, say spinning was like a big thing back then instead. So, okay, cool. So I go to this gym, I start spinning, and I wind up talking to this trainer who also tore his shoulder. And he told me, when he tore his shoulder, he told me like he literally could not move his arm. Now, at least I still had total movement in my arm, but according to him, his arm was basically hanging there. And he said that he was able to recover without surgery just by doing some basic movements, which he showed me. One was like creeping your fingers up the wall in a circle. I don't know if you've seen that one. But I'm like, okay. So I took off literally an entire year from my yoga practice. Now, I still taught, but I could not do anything that involved lowering down, like bending my elbows, like say chaturanga dandasana, for example. It was excruciating. Now, just to be sort of forthright about where this injury came from, it did come from yoga, but not in the way that you would imagine. I was in a very packed class, and I jumped into handstand from downward facing dog, and I sort of lost my balance, and I moved my hand forward to catch myself, okay, which normally would work, except for that it hit someone's towel that was sitting there and my arm went out from underneath me. So it wasn't the actual yoga or a misalignment, but it was somebody's towel. And then my mistake was that I just continued. Now, when I say continued, I don't just mean that practice. I continued for weeks until my arm was in such excruciating pain that I just could not get on a mat in good conscience. Okay, so I took off an entire year. And in that year, I just did lower body stuff, which was basically every day, either spinning or doing the Santa Monica stairs. Fine. Every few months, I would go back to class, try it again. It was a disaster, and I'd take off again. And when I came back after an entire year off, it was like I had never practiced before. Like I was like a baby giraffe on my yoga mat. I was like wobbly and unsure and uncomfortable and falling everywhere and not strong, not bendy, nothing. And so, note to self, maybe taking a year off was not my best idea I ever had. Now, for some people, they would say it was your best idea because for all intents and purposes, I did heal my shoulder to a point where I have been at, I'll say 95% ever since, okay? I mean, there's some weird little tweaky things in there, but I did get back. In how long did it take me to like recover my, let's say where I was before I tore my shoulder to after? About 3 weeks. 3 weeks of daily practice. Back then I was practicing an hour and a half a day. And I was pretty much at least stable in my handstands again, and not in the way of a baby giraffe. So let's fast forward to where I tore my meniscus. Now again, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, why do I want to learn yoga from somebody who is injuring herself so much? Now, was this a yoga injury? I'm sure that years and years and years of yoga and Virasana and stuff may have had an impact, but on this particular weekend, I had practice Friday morning and then I went out of town. And I was out of town all day Saturday, Sunday. I did not practice while I was out of town, and I got back Sunday night. I woke up Monday morning after not practicing for essentially 3 days in excruciating pain. I'm a pretty violent sleeper, I think. I tore my meniscus in my sleep. Okay, so at this point, I'm in my mid 40s, okay, or closing in on my late 40s, and I was like, I don't think that I can afford to take a year off again. And of course, what did the doctor say? You guessed it. The doctor said what he always says, which is get surgery. And I said what I always say, which is no, thank you. I honestly, unless I absolutely need surgery, I would rather work around it. Okay, so what did that look like? Well, spoiler alert, I did not take a year off. And I actually didn't take a day off. Now, let me put this in perspective. At the time, I could not walk to the end of my street without terrific pain in my knee. That's how bad it was. So you're probably thinking, okay, well, obviously she must have done like a yin practice, just something pretty basic or calm or chill or whatever. The answer is no. I actually did my full practice. Now, if you are on my Vimeo, on my subscription channels on Vimeo, and the link is always in like my descriptions of all my videos. Maybe you've watched my full Monty or fuller Monty videos. Okay, that is what I do every day if you want to get a sense of what I do every day. With my torn meniscus, I did the same. the same. Now, I did have to modify a few things because here's the thing. I don't want to hurt myself, and there is nothing in yoga worth hurting yourself about. Let me make that really, really clear. There is nothing in yoga worth hurting yourself about. So, like for example, when I was doing Virasana, I think at the beginning I was probably sitting on 2 blocks, which was pretty high for somebody who could pretty easily just plop down into Virasana in my sleep before that. Malasana as well, I believe that I had to open my feet, I mean this was years ago now, to make it a little more manageable on my knees. And in some torsions, like say Warrior 2, okay? The 90 degrees in front did not bother me, but the torsion of the back leg did. So during that period for a while, I had to work with crescent instead of warriors, not just Warrior 2, Warrior 1. So those were the kinds of modifications that I made. Now, where am I today? I'm at about 95% in my meniscus. That took about a year and a half to clear up. There are things I will never do again just because, like I won't do a pistol squat from standing, but I'm fine doing it from an actual squatting position. Or pressing back up in that. That's about it, honestly. That's about it. Every once in a while, it flares up. I put on my knee sleeve for like 24 hours, and it's better. So, here's the thing that I really do want to impart to you. Different bodies have different reactions to injuries, okay? For some people, rest is absolutely the answer. I just don't happen to be some of those people. For me, what I find is that when I take time off, it hurts more when I get back on my mat. In fact, when I tore my meniscus, I took a few weeks off because I was on vacation. And when I came back, it was just white hot pain. It was horrific. So for me, moving is definitely the solution, but I'm not a doctor and I'm not here to tell you that that is the solution for everything. But let me elucidate. When it comes to healing injuries, again, nothing is worth hurting yourself over. But my suggestion is that you literally push on the edge of the injury, meaning go to the point where you are not feeling pain and just press on it just a tiny amount, okay? Because here's the thing, if you succumb to your injury, you wind up not only like stuck where you are, but with no chance of moving forward because A, scar tissue is going to build, but B, your body is not going to work to move past the injury if you keep coddling the injury. The way that I think about it, and V, I see your question and I will be with you in a minute. The way that I see it, imagine like you live alone and you have this like massive armoire, right? It's massive. There's no way you can move it. And you really want to redecorate. You want to get this armoire to the other side of the room. I mean, you don't have a friend, you don't have family, you're just you floating alone. So every day you push on it and you push on it and pushing it, and it moves like that much every day, like that much. But after a year or whatever time, it's gonna make it across the room. And that's how I approach my injuries, is I'm sensitive to them. I don't go past the edge of what is reasonable for me for dealing with them, but I definitely test those edges all the time. The other thing that is so important, and those of you who have worked with me closely or followed me closely know that mindset is incredibly important, incredibly important. And if you want to be okay, you have to believe you are okay. Right now, like right now in my life right now, I have like some biceps tendonitis going on and even in my triceps, really my whole shoulder girdle on my right side. There are nights where I wake up in so much pain that I'm like, oh my God, my career is over. My arm feels like it's gonna break off. And then I wake up in the morning and I do the full Monty. 100%, no pain, no struggle. I just do it. Why? Because I just believe I'm fine. I believe I can do anything, and I can do anything. And quite frankly, the only reason I could do anything that you see on my channel that makes you go, it's only because I believe I can do it. And so remember that, the studies I've seen, it sounds like approximately 75% of all physical illness is psychosomatic, okay? Meaning either you created it with your own mind or you make it worse with your own mind. And that just as valuable as our mind is as a tool to hurt ourselves, it is a tool to help ourselves. And there have been miraculous healings from people who literally heal themselves just by telling themselves that they are healed. Don't believe me? Look up Wayne Dyer and hear what he has to say about healing yourself with your mind. If you've ever heard of a placebo, and by the way, every single medical experiment or whatever clinical trial ever done always has a placebo. Now, why would they do that? If it weren't valid that your mind could heal you, why would the actual medical institutions use placebos? It's because they understand that our minds can heal ourselves. So you need to learn to get into a mental state that stops with the personal messaging that you're sick, you're broken, you're injured, you're this, you're that, you're incapable, you're fat, you're heavy, you're inflexible, you're weak, get past all that. Just throw that stuff away. It's not serving you. And we all know about self-limiting beliefs, but believe me, because I'm here as a testament to tell you that those self-limiting beliefs are holding you back from progress in overcoming injuries, just as it is in getting in the way of progress of your goals. So that being said, let me move on. I'm going to read, so V, you said, what should absolute beginners do? I'm not, can you elucidate on that? Do about injuries, you mean? So here's the thing. I'm going to assume that what you mean is when you have injuries. And the answer is, unless you are like some sort of physical therapist, you probably, as a beginner, do not have enough intuitive knowledge of the practice to modify on your own. Because okay, hold on one sec. Let me finish this thought. It's because if you don't understand like the depth of the practice, you won't understand how to modify things to keep yourself safe in injuries. So if you have an injury and you are a beginner, I can't emphasize enough, do not do just videos. You need personal instruction and you need personal feedback. Now, you could do that with me, which would be awesome, but you do want somebody who can actually help you directly to mindfully move through injuries instead of just faking it till you make it. Because sometimes if you're a beginner, you might come up with modifications that aren't actually sound for your body. Okay, so what should absolute beginners do starting yoga? Okay, well, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to practice yoga and you're an absolute beginner, that you should be doing classes, meaning like my YouTube channel is primarily dedicated to teaching postures, but my Vimeo channels are where I have full-length classes. And again, the links for my Vimeo channels are in the description, and I usually put them also in like the informational links and end screens as well. But on my Vimeo channels, for example, I have beginning classes, intermediate classes, advanced and all levels classes. Each title tells you what level it is, what level of intensity, and I 100% guarantee that the instruction, particularly on the level 1 and 1-2 classes, is extremely comprehensive, and more comprehensive than you'll find just about anywhere. That being said, I would say that if you were to pick just one part of yoga to do, Sun Salutation A, and I have beginner Sun Salutation A videos right here on YouTube. To me, that is the basis of the whole vinyasa practice, and it's a brilliant sequence that is only missing a spinal twist, but besides that really has every element that you need for a beautiful practice. So I would start with Sun Salutations if you want something just like to learn like the basic foundation, and then graduate to the full-length classes. And again, I'm heavily biased. I recommend my Vimeo classes. Okay, next question is, how many push-ups do you need to be able to do for press handstand? Sunshine, I wish I could just give you an answer and say, oh, if you could do 50 push-ups, you'll be able to press to handstand. Listen, first of all, your push-ups in yoga, I actually have a push-ups video, but let me just say that when you're practicing push-ups in yoga, I recommend doing the chaturanga push-ups, which I'll just do 1 or 2 really quickly, which are halfway down instead of all the way down. So it's elbows inside out, and you lower to 90 degrees, not lower than that, okay? So you just lower to 90 degrees. And the more important really than the push-up itself is that you engage your entire body so your whole body moves simultaneously, okay? You don't want your hips dragging or leading. Now again, I have a chaturanga push-up video here on YouTube that has really detailed instructions. And if you have specific questions, you could certainly ask them here. Now, that being said, press handstand, and by the way, there's a lot of press handstands. We've got tuck press, we've got straddle press, we've got pike press, we've got split leg press. So I'm not sure which press you're talking about, but let me say that when you are looking to master handstands, believe it or not, it's not as arm-y as you might expect. Yes, the arms are the foundation and they're very important, but mostly it's an alignment-based practice. And if you remember, I say this a lot, hips over shoulders over wrists. The more that you align, the less strength you're gonna have to put into maintaining the balance. So really, to master your handstands, I would do push-ups. I would do them, you know, in sets of 5 or 10, as many as you can. And by the way, you could split them up throughout your practice, or even throughout your day. I had a student who, believe it or not, took my 200-hour teacher training 3 times, and she looked like Wonder Woman. I mean, she had just a rock solid body. And when she came to my first training, or my training the first time, she literally, her entire physical practice, the only thing she did was 500 push-ups a day. Okay, that's a little extreme. She was extremely, you know, just rock solid, but it meant during a day, not in a row. Like, she would do some when she woke up, she would do some when she's cooking, she would do like just all the time. Now, push-ups are fantastic for handstand because they share most of the same alignments, except for the arms. Really, the whole entire body is the same, and it teaches you how to engage everything, including your core. Now, for anybody who's specifically interested in mastering handstands in the middle of the room, I do have my Handstand Breakthrough Revolution course that is 8 weeks of handstand and mindset training, dedicated specifically to teaching you how to get stable in handstands in the middle of the room. So I hope that answers your question. Do as many push-ups as you can, as often as you can. They definitely help everything, but it's not a simple matter of do X number of push-ups and you will wind up pressing into a handstand. I really do wish it were that simple. Okay, Blossom, about your injury, do you think you can make progress during the healing or just continue with what you have been practicing? Well, I mean, so Blossom, you know me well. You did my Handstand Breakthrough Revolution course with tremendous success. And so you know that the first thing that I'm going to say is everything is progress, right? I think your question is probably deeper than that, and I'll go ahead and answer it deeper than that. But a big part of succeeding in any of our yoga goals is learning to celebrate our wins and knowing that, first of all, every time you step on the mat, that's a win. And every day that you practice, that's progress. And sometimes progress is small and hard to see, but it's always there. I always like to think of it like a seedling. You know, you plant a seed, and it spends so much time germinating under the ground, you don't see anything, right? And yet it's doing its thing, and it could grow into, well, anything, right? It could grow into like a 1,000,000-foot tree, or it could grow into whatever, a bush or a watermelon. But all of that stuff happens under the surface. So when you say, do I think I can make progress during the healing? I'm not sure if you mean progress in healing the injury or progress in your practice. But let me first of all note that there are a million things you could be doing on your mat. A million. Now, as I said before, the fact that I work through all my injuries without taking any sort of break or backing off my practice with just minimal modifications is not what I'm recommending for everyone, okay? It's just how my young mind and body work. And if that's a mindset that works for you, I do recommend that. But remember how I said that when I tore my shoulder, I took a year off and I did spinning and I did running the stairs. So that would be an example of I made progress. I made huge progress. My progress happened to be with my lower body and with my cardio, but I made huge progress in those areas during my injury recovery, right? So it really depends on how you want to define progress. Now, can you make progress I'm supposing that what you mean is like in a pose that actually uses the part that's injured. Feel free to clarify if that's what you mean. And to that respect, I would say, well, probably no. Like, I mean, if I'm working on Virasana and I have a torn meniscus, progress is going to be very, very slow. But okay, from crow 5 seconds to 10 seconds. Okay, Blossom, in relation to what kind of an injury though? Do you mean if you tore your arm, shoulder, or do you mean with a knee injury or a toe injury? You see, there's a difference because what I'm saying is that you can, like, for sure, like if I hurt my knee, it's not going to affect my handstand practice very much, right? So I could make huge progress focusing on handstands, for example. You know, when I hurt my, again, upper body, then I can make huge progress on lower body stuff. And in fact, even on my Vimeo, I have certain classes that are like no hands, no arms, no legs even, no knees, where I create, again, vinyasa classes that basically avoid the body part that hurts. So in my opinion, can you go from crow 5 seconds to crow 10 seconds? The answer is, of course, even as you're healing. Again, mindset. The very word healing indicates that something positive is going on. So I would focus on the healing more than the injury, and as a result, I think the progress will very naturally come. Now, even when I am modifying due to an injury, I am still, again, as I said, pushing my edges. Now here's something interesting is that injuries, as far as I'm concerned, inform your practice in a way that nothing else does. Okay, not even a teacher, not even me. Why? Because I'm not in your body, and no teacher's in your body, no physiologist is in your body, no PT is in your body, no doctor is in your body. So if you have an injury, even if it's a common injury, the actual symptoms are going to be, at least to an extent, unique to you. And so by learning to be mindful on your mat about how your body can and cannot move, really helps things along. I mean, okay, let's go into another injury. I sprained my ankle pretty badly once, not yoga at all. This was so far from yoga because I wasn't being mindful. I was like walking down the stairs and texting, and I just tumbled down the stairs, and that's embarrassing. But anyway, so I went to the doctor because my ankle was like, and he's like, it's gonna be, what did he say, 6 weeks before I could practice again. Let me just say, I was back on the mat after 1 week. And by the way, back then, I wasn't even at home. I was still practicing in studio. So I was doing level 2-3 class within a week. And within 2 weeks, I was 100% again. Again, like, I can avoid stuff because a doctor told me that something is hurt, or I could do it because in my mind, I don't want to be hurt. But here's what I want to say is that ankle issue, it was so weird because there would be certain poses that did not seem to involve ankles at all. I can't give one offhand because I just can't think. Maybe it was like, say kicking into a handstand, that just intuitively I know was not going to work on my ankle. And it was so interesting that my body started developing sort of its own intelligence. Now, one of like the best things that came out of my shoulder injury, because what hurt it more than anything, as I told you, was lowering down to chaturanga dandasana, right? And so I'm like, well, I, as a vinyasa practitioner, can't really do much with a practice that doesn't involve chaturanga. And by the way, I think chaturanga is one of the most important poses in the whole practice if you are concerned with building true upper body strength and control, plus mastering arm balances and inversions. So I'm like, okay, well, chaturanga was what hurt me more than anything. So I'm like, okay, there's got to be a way to make this manageable. There's just got to be. Because if I continue doing it wrong, what was happening was, because I was doing it incorrectly, it was hurting more, right? And when you feel pain, that is your body warning you that there's an injury coming if you don't back off. So I'm like, okay, so obviously that's a non-starter. I cannot continue to do what I'm already doing unless I'm willing to sacrifice A, my shoulder, and B, my entire yoga practice. And so it was from that and from experimenting, going, okay, well, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And it turned out that what worked, it wasn't new information. It was information I knew but wasn't really fully integrating, was I really needed to make sure my shoulders were in the back and down position in my plank, right? Establishing it before I lowered down. And the second thing was, I know that looks like 3, but to me that's 2. The second thing was that I really needed to move forward more in space, creating more of a 90-degree angle, because if you just go straight down, you wind up with like an acute angle. But if you go forward, you can get that true 90 degrees. And that's where my shoulder no longer felt any pain or discomfort. Now, that information of how to lower is in my chaturanga dandasana tutorial here on YouTube. And I mention it all the time when I'm teaching. But that knowledge honestly came as the result of an injury. And so, okay, this is gonna sound so weird and crazy, but in a weird way, I actually welcome injuries. God, don't listen too carefully to this, okay? It is not that welcome, but I get like sort of anatomy nerd excited because it's gonna give me an opportunity to understand something new in my body. And I really love experimenting with my injuries to say, okay, well, this doesn't work, this does. How can I change my approach to make it work better for my body? Because the truth is, if something works better for your body while you're injured, it's also gonna work better for your body while you're not injured, which in turn should help prevent injuries in the future. Okay, sunshine. I'm a vegan and OMD. I'm not sure what OMD is. I'm 52, I can't think that hard. What kind of effect it has on my yoga practice, and what time do I do what time do I do yoga and what time do I have my meal? Okay, maybe OMD means the intermittent fasting. I'm not sure. Could you clarify what OMD is? But yes, I am a one meal a day. Okay, yes. Okay, so basically intermittent fasting. Okay, I'm a very strict vegan. Like very, very strict. No exceptions. I don't eat wedding cake. I don't, eat challah on Shabbat. Like there are no exceptions in my life. So let me just say that. I've been a vegan for about, I think, a decade now. And I was a very strict vegetarian for 21 years before that. And then I gave up the milk and the eggs. Now, let me just go on record as saying that I am a vegan for moral reasons, not necessarily for health reasons. So though I am a huge proponent of veganism and It has served me really, really well. I understand that it is not for everybody, and not everybody shares like the same thoughts or reasons for becoming a vegan. If you want to be a vegan for health reasons or to lose weight, there are different considerations. One of which is actually your blood type, and there's a book called I think it's called Eating for Your Type, that goes over the different blood types and which diets are best for each one. I happen to have A positive blood. I hope that's not something I'm not supposed to like put into like the real world, but I like it because my doctor when I was little was like, you'll remember it because you're an A+ person. And A positive is very conducive to veganism or vegetarianism, so I've really been able to thrive on a vegan diet. That's one thing, blood type that you might want to consider, and also like how intrinsically does it make you feel. Now, with the 1 meal a day, wait, let me, that's going to be a longer answer than what time do I do things. That's the easy answer. Okay, what time do I practice? I practice yoga between 6 and I start my practice between 6 and about 7 a.m. every morning, usually closer to 6. If I have like some major thing that has to be dealt with, an email or something, it might be 7, but I generally wake up at 5:30 and I'm on my mat at 6, but whatever it is, I always practice my yoga first thing in the morning. I don't do anything except for maybe like an emergency email, as previously mentioned, in the morning before my practice, including eating. I always practice on an empty stomach. I've always done all of my exercise on an empty stomach my whole life, even as a child, even through my competitive sports years, and all the way having nothing to do with 1 meal a day. That's just always been my thing. I also think it's really hard to practice yoga with food in your stomach. So I practice first thing in the morning. So every day I basically have like a matcha that's like this big, and I have a meal that's as big as I feel like eating. Some days I get full in a second, and some days I'm very hungry and I just keep eating, to be honest. I say that because depending on how I'm feeling is whether the meal comes first or the matcha. So usually I will have my first one, which is the meal or the matcha, if I'm like really, really hungry for some reason, which is rare. I'm not usually hungry in the morning. I might have one of those at like 11 a.m., between 11 and 12, let's say. And I usually have the second one between about 3 and 4 p.m. Now, let me just say that the 1 meal a day was less of a conscious decision and more of just something that just happened because A, I've never been a breakfast eater. B, I'm just so busy during the day that a lot of times I can't eat until the afternoon. And C, I think that you get much better sleep when your food is fully digested before you go to sleep. So I prefer not to eat after 6 anyway. So it was sort of that confluence of events that made it to basically 1 meal a day, usually around 3 o'clock. But sometimes I'm really starving. I might have it earlier and have the tea at 3. I'm not super crazy strict about that, the way I am about my veganism. If I'm hungry at night, usually I'll make a protein shake, just, you know, like a small, like a, you know, like a normal size glass, with like peanut butter, protein shake, protein powder, oat milk, banana, and Hershey's syrup. Sorry. And sometimes I'll add in some other things like whatever, flax meal or chia seeds or something like that. Or if I really need some bulk, like something like maybe like Actually, flax meal chia seeds at bulk. Sometimes I'll even put in some oats. So anyway, what kind of effect does it have on my yoga practice? Tremendous. First of all, when I actually have like a whole thing on my Vimeo Q&A about this very topic, about all the things that I sort of changed in my diet in the last year and a half or so. But for those of you who've been watching me for a while, you may have noticed I've lost about 10, 15 pounds in the last year and a half. And my body's really leaned out. And I think that the 1 meal a day makes a big difference. I also use some supplements that help. And so why am I mentioning that? Because I'm leaner, so my muscles are more efficient. And when you're lighter, it's just easier to do things. Like pressing is easier because you've got less weight to press. I mean, quite frankly. Twists are gonna be easier because you have less like bulk or whatever to twist around. Not that I was ever like this massive person, but I had been working for years in Asana, right? Which is a very deep like squat, twist, bind thing. By the way, I'm going to be shooting a second video on that one because it's such a tough video, such a tough pose, probably today. So expect that on YouTube soon. But I do have a Asana video here on YouTube. But that only came after I lost a ton of weight. Now, there was a lot of practice that went into it, but it's such a compact and deep twist. I really do think it made a difference. And when I switched to all these changes that made me lose this 10 to 15 pounds, I say 10 to 15 because I'm a woman. My weight changes. Also, I don't have a very accurate scale, but it's closer to 15. Was that if you see some of my videos where suddenly instead of just like pressing from crow to handstand back to crow, I'm going up and down, like 5, 6, 7, 8 times, that was something that was, let me at least say, a lot harder when I was carrying the extra weight. So I hope that answers your question. I have difficulties improving my pancake. I can get my chin to the ground when I stretch passively with someone pushing my back, but when I try to activate by myself, I struggle. I need tips. My first tip is not to have someone push on your back. I personally am not a big fan of forcing yourself into any stretches, okay? Because a lot of times that means that you're being pushed deeper than your body is naturally ready to go in. So be careful with assists. However, if you're working with a certified instructor, maybe that's what you're talking about, and they are pushing by lengthening your body and then pulling you forward, which would basically feel like their chest on your back, pulling you up and lengthening you out as you lean backwards into them, that is kosher. But beside that, keep in mind that every forward bend has an element of a back bend in it, okay? So I'm just gonna quickly, before I get into your actual question, let me just do a basic forward bend concept. When you forward bend, you don't want to forward bend like this by rounding into the pose, okay? Because when you round your spine, you actually release your hamstrings, okay? So because you're tilting your pelvis back, which means that the bottom of the pelvis goes forward, which makes this length shorter. It's the opposite of stretching. Now, how do we stretch? We make sure that our sits bones are back so that we're lengthening as much as possible and that our spine stays in extension so that the pelvis stays tilting in a direction that goes back and pulls the hamstring straight. Now, if someone is pressing on your back and you're going like this, you're not going to be able to replicate that. So, when you are doing, in yoga, it's called Upavishta Konasana, which is basically a wide angle pose. When we're doing this pose, if you can get down your chin to the floor passively with someone pushing on you, then my guess is you can keep your back flat. Yes? So as you're going forward, okay, and I have a video on this as well. It's called Upavishta Konasana, okay? So it's not titled Pancake, but you could find that on my channel. As I walk forward, I'm actually simultaneously pushing my hips backwards, okay, to root my tailbone. And what that does is also by having my hands here, it allows me to maintain the spinal extension versus the what's called flexion, which is the rounding of the spine. Now, I hope it's fairly obvious that because so much of yoga is dedicated to keeping your spine healthy, that a round spine is not something we encourage in any way. But one of my actually most popular YouTube shorts is how to get deeper into Upavishta Konasana. Now, the forward bend will come, but I don't know if I have enough room to stay on camera here, but if you take your heels to the wall, okay, take one hand in front and one hand behind, lift and scoot, and then when you get in, flex your feet, okay? So flex your feet each time. I might wind up off the screen. But as you flex your feet, you pull back in and you keep doing that. Hello. You keep doing that until you're up against the wall. Now, I'm not fully warm right now, but that is the best way that I know to really super effectively get that split action. And once you've got that, going forward, I think is the easy part. In fact, in my opinion, it actually makes the pose sometimes easier depending on different variables in your body. So I hope that helps. But again, if anybody's helping you from behind, you got to make sure that they're lifting your spine and pulling you forward and that you're leaning back into them, maintaining that spinal extension. So Sunshine, lighter makes everything easier. It makes sense. No wonder Indian yogis are skinny but strong. Here's something that's also very interesting to me about yoga is that as opposed to gymnastics, right, which obviously shares a lot of the same movements, that yoga, if you have like a really well-defined practice, combines strength and stretch into the same movements, where in gymnastics, they're separate. Which is why if you look at a gymnast body, it's going to be tight and taut, right? Really strong. Particularly you'll see this in the men. Really big, strong muscles, right? But you look at, again, because men have different upper bodies, you look at a male yogi and they're going to be like skinnier, leaner, longer because they're stretching as they get into their musculature. Okay. Any other questions before we sign off? And I really, really appreciate everybody who showed up today. Just so you know, again, I've got my Vimeo channels, which honestly is the best way to progress in your practice. This YouTube, again, is really dedicated to teaching people the poses that you have to do in the classes. But the classes are the important part, particularly if you actually want to be like a real life yoga practitioner. Again, I have my handstand breakthrough revolution. If handstands are your jam, link will be in the description. And I also have Patreon if you are interested in supporting me that way. I do post one class a month there as well. Thank you guys so much for showing up. I'm going to just Any other questions? Going once. Going twice. Namaste. Thank you so much, and I will see you again really soon. Have an awesome day.